Chris, you were given a talk previously about the trends, and you prepared this presentation probably a little bit earlier. Now, what would your trends change, taking the circumstances currently happening? What would be the trend at the end of the March? Maybe you can speculate or just share it from your perspective.
Yeah, Danny and I were just talking about this backstage. I think Danny has the right attitude towards it. Everybody in this room should know that your job in a time like this is to get creative and innovate. Like the entrepreneurs, their role in the economy is to move things forward, like Danny said, when things go south. And a lot of the most successful businesses were started in recessions. And so it's funny because there are two sides to this whole situation. There's the negative side, the negative impact on sellers from the manufacturing side, but then there are a lot of sellers in the Titan network and in our portfolio at Sophie that are actually benefiting, some of them greatly, from the situation. And I mean, I was talking to a seller yesterday who has like a baby sanitation product, and he's in the Titan mastermind with me, and he's saying, I feel really guilty about this, but like, I'm doing awesome because of this situation. Like I had to increase my prices to keep from running out of stock, and the sales didn't change at all. So I'm gonna run out of stock anyway at double the price. And this is a product that's $200 a unit. So it's crazy. But that's the kind of, first of all, you don't need to feel guilty for people buying your product for a need that they have, whether perceived or real. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing morally wrong with you selling products that people are buying.
Can I interject?
Yeah,
But
price gouging, that's a different story.
Yeah.
That and Danny's done a lot on that about the masks over the past couple months as well, and I agree with that. But there's nothing wrong with this, as long as you're not totally screwing people over. There's nothing wrong with responding to a market demand, perceived or real. So as entrepreneurs, like the way that we view this situation should be from a point of how can I spin this as a positive, not as a negative. And I think that's the mindset that everybody in this room has to have in order to build up from here, both as a community and for your own business.
You touched on very interesting points. There are people who believe that raising the price may not be ethical, and there is like a mixed opinions.
Right, but people do it anyway when they're running out of inventory, like with or without a situation, right?
We're talking about cases of ambulance chasing, like being out of control.
Yeah,
or,
and that,
or
like you're not
facetiously going into looking to go and buy masks that you can sell up a marked up price.
And not like 10xing the price,
exactly.
right?
What
Like
I'm
that's
saying
a
is,
different thing.
people looking for opportunity. Okay, the world's desperate. Let me see if I can profit off the possibility of death and this virus. I couldn't put my head on the pillow at night. What I would encourage you guys is you actually gone to your factories and asked them, how are you? How's your family? Because the thing is, you're worried about your products, but they are real people building your products for you.
Agreed.
You should be looking at the care of them. What I did, and I haven't said this public until now, and I encourage you to do the same, is that I went and bought up 2,500 masks. My team's distributed them across the Philippines, orphanages, kids' schools and stuff like that. Do some positive stuff there. If you've got it and you can contribute, help the world move forward in a better way as well. It makes you feel good and look after your team as well. If any of you guys in here need any masks, I'll see if there's any left and we'll get them over to your team in the Philippines. How many people got people in the Philippines? Yeah? If there's some left, drop me an email, danny@sellersessions.com. I'll ask to see if there's left and we'll get some out to your team.
There's something I want to read to you guys. This is a chat from one of our Chinese staff in China. And this blew me away. And I just want to read it to you. It's very short. She's in China. Hi, Seth. How are you? I have heard that the virus effect in Europe and Italy and other countries is getting worse. America also has people cannot buy masks from pharmacy. If you need masks, I can send you some. It takes only 3 to 4 days to arrive. Take care. From China. Now, where is the greater risk right now? China or the US? China. And she is looking out for me.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing. And so I just want to second what you said, Danny. Not only is it an opportunity to care for them, but also be strategic. build a deeper relationship with your supplier.
Yeah.
Like, this is a great opportunity. Do you remember back in the days when you start looking for a supplier in Alibaba and they call you friend? Anyone experience that, or dear?
They usually call me dear.
Yeah, dear. And they're like, as an American, it's like, that's weird. Like, I don't understand it. But I later began to understand it. Friendship, business, working together, long-term relationship carries so much more weight than some piece of paper that's like an NDA.
Who do you
with
want
the
to work
Chinese.
with? People you like and people you trust.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is that's good for you too. It's good for everybody to take the attitude that Danny just laid out, because then you're a brand who cares. I mean, that's really huge.
Is there anyone in the room that have got product? You don't have to name, but anyone got in the room got products which will help in this situation? Mask, sanitizer, anything like that? No.
You might not even know that you do, though. Like
Yeah.
there were a couple brands that were like, I don't know why my sales are spiking, and then they look it up and they're like, oh, an article just came out that zinc supplements like help with the
Yeah.
virus. And they're like, oh, that's why it's been Christmas for the last like 3 weeks for my business.
We have one person here. I actually managed to chat to him, Vladimir, who's selling oxygen, and he was trying to get FBA up to approve to sell the containers with oxygen, but it's hazmat, so they don't let him, and he's now trying to get it. So even it's one of the product that now is in demand, but Amazon doesn't want to take responsibility for delivering it. So if you wanna maybe share some thoughts on logistics and dangerous products, are we gonna see? It was actually one of the questions from the audience. Will we see more restrictions on goods arriving from countries that are now perceived as dangerous? Are you gonna see maybe some changes the way Amazon or even international borders will probably increase the restrictions on, like, do you see that happening or not based on outcomes of the coronavirus?
I could definitely speak to this a little bit. So usually there's two reasons if a product doesn't get in because of hazmat. One is because it wasn't approved, or two, it just will never be approved. So if you have a product that you want to sell that maybe hazmat, what I recommend is create the listing first before you even invest any money. Wait 2 weeks, put in all the keywords that could possibly flag Amazon, and Amazon will tell you very quickly if there's an issue. Second, once you do that, make sure that the supplier gives you an MSDS sheet, because if they don't, they're probably a trading company. Very likely, any legitimate factory will have a material safety data sheet. And the way Amazon works is they have all these fulfillment centers, and only a percentage of each fulfillment center can hold a hazmat product. So once it fills up, it will force them to ship it to a different fulfillment center. So it's a percentage issue in their fulfillment center. Because if there's too much and there was an explosion, that leaks into the natural environment and could go into lakes and rivers and affect the fish in the environment. So just on one side, when you mentioned that, a lot of sellers when they start, and again, I don't know the seller, he may be beyond that side, but a lot of times at the beginning, it's an issue of getting it approved for hazmat, either an exception or sending in the MSDS sheet to Amazon for approval. And then second, if it's the whole other issue where they're not even allowing it, now we have a whole other level with FDA.
Yeah, I guess it's the second issue because the company has been in business for 20 years. So they've been supplying the product, but they can't get it on Amazon.
Gotcha.
Okay, we have a couple of questions from the audience, and this may apply not just on raising prices, but also on down pricing. So here's the question: how do you deal with pricing policy on Amazon where they block your products due quoting unfair pricing policies? So if somebody puts the price too high or actually puts below, does Amazon actually have any policy on the pricing? Does it apply from your experience?
Yeah, Amazon put like specific restrictions on pricing for products relating to this whole situation, and it started to ban sellers for price gouging. That already did happen. Yeah. So yeah, is this relating to this situation or in general? He's asking about pricing.
It's not clear from the question, but we could answer it both ways.
Yeah, well, like in general, when you're testing pricing, like the general rule of thumb is to titrate up and down. If you do like a gigantic price increase, you can lose the buy box. Or get docked by Amazon. So you want to do price testing, either split testing or just testing on your own when it comes to pricing. If you just double the price right away, you're going to screw yourself over.
And I think that another thing that helps too is if you know the price range of your top competitors, like I mentioned earlier, let's say it's between 50 and 60. Well, you already know, in quotes, the fair price based on Amazon standards. And Amazon uses sales also a lot of time to validate a price. So if those sellers are selling high, then you already have a range which you can operate within. That's why when I launch a new product, I like it to be under the most expensive. Not only that, but then people feel like they're getting a deal.
I see a few questions from people who are running out of stock. And the question is, how many days do you have as a buffer before your product runs out? And what strategies would you do in case if the product is running out? I know one of the speakers said that it's better to shut down the listing rather than keep it. But if somebody's running out of stock now, what would you recommend?
So the reason I will shut the listing down and recommend all our students do it is because if you don't, so I like to say go out like a freight train. If anything, I'll actually reduce the price. I want it to sell out as fast as it can, and here's why. That means my BSR is dropping. That means my keywords are ranking faster and faster. And then I close the listing, which means even though the BSR will show is going way up, you've now frozen your sales history. And Amazon keeps very good track record of your sales history. So when I come back in and I have new inventory back in, that BSR is going to drop. Won't be the exact, but it's going to drop back down again. And therefore I have to spend less time and money on PPC to get it ranking at the same. Obviously what you're referring to is a different situation. We're talking about like an epidemic going on. People need it now. So someone's, looking at the market and charging more, but that's a different scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. No, what you said is the way to do it. We do the same thing.
Yeah.
Going out and shield.
Yeah.
And we have more, I would say, psychological question. And Chris, maybe this one is for you. You said during the speech that you handled panic and you went over it. And one of the online users is asking now, how do you actually handle the panic right now with what's happening? How do you stay calm? And what could you do to prevent panic getting over you?
Yeah, I could definitely start on this. I think there's two elements to the situation that we're in right now. One is a viral infection and one is like a psychological infection of fear. And I think that is actually the most impactful infection is the infection of fear. And that is a very viral emotion and it's a viral feeling that spreads as easily as an actual virus. So, but you have control over that. Your thoughts control your actions, which control your deep feelings. And
you feed the thoughts into your mind anyway. So.
Yeah. Everything that you put in your mind becomes your state of being. And just since you said we were getting deep, I'll get deep. But I've had lots of times like the story I just told on stage when I had a panic attack at this very event last year, where the universe has been constantly teaching me this lesson, and for some reason it has to keep getting fucking pounded into my head. But it is true that you can control your state of being, that you're not you don't have to be swept into mob mentality. You don't have to be affected by what that guy said to you or this deal that went wrong or this partner that you're no longer with or whatever it is. You can control your state of being by controlling your thoughts. And there are two things that affect one another. There's a really awesome yoga book that I read that describes it as like a pond with like sand on the floor of the pond. And the pond on the top has waves that are like your thoughts. And those affect the shape of the sand and the waves of the sand below. But the shape of the sand below also affects the waves that appear on top. So the waves are like your thoughts. Those are the things that are most readily available to you that you feel you can control and that are like your most conscious behavior. But the seafloor is your feeling. So if your feelings can affect your thoughts and you can start having lots of negative thoughts because your general feeling is of anxiety, stress, fear, and then you start making bad decisions. But you can interrupt that loop of this fear causing fearful thoughts and those fearful thoughts causing more fearful feelings by changing your thoughts. And it takes a while because your feeling of fear will keep producing these thoughts of fear and anxiety and panic and stress. But when you change your thoughts consciously to opposite of that, and calm and focus and creativity and confidence, those affect your deep being and your deep feeling over time, which then it's a reinforcing feedback loop in the right direction where that starts to affect your thoughts, and you naturally start to have more confident thoughts, more calm thoughts, more positive thoughts, more creative thoughts. And I've added this practice to my morning routine along with running and some exercise and a green smoothie, and it has dramatically changed my state of being every day. So that applies to this situation, but it also just applies to life.
Yeah.
Is it a vegan smoothie?
Is it a vegan smoothie?
What?
I was just curious. Is it a vegan smoothie?
So ultimately,
yeah, actually, it is.
as it comes
Kale,
down
blueberries.
to it's peaks and valleys, right? So in life, you're going to have cycles. You've got to know where the valleys are coming and you ride the peaks, yeah? So it's a constant thing. This is another peak and valley that we're going to go through. And so how you hold it down and how you focus is going to make a big difference. If you have an onset of fear, you can't think creatively. And what happens is it's about momentum, and the pendulum swings either way. You can go one way and it goes on a long run of destruction or whatever, or it can go on a positive way and you push it up that way.
Several of you guys later today after I spoke came up, and the most common word I heard was fear. It was like, I'm afraid. What about this? What about this? What about this? And I've come to believe that fear is not something to be conquered, but fear is something to be faced, and there's a difference. And I also had a panic attack. I don't know if this is common amongst entrepreneurs, but I'm seeing a trend.
It's so like coming out.
So it was January 2019.
No.
It was the first time we decided we were going to actually hire staff instead of just having VAs and contractors, which are great, but we really felt like we needed staff to really grow Just One Dime and our brands to the level we wanted to. And so we hired, and this is insane, in 3 weeks we hired over 20 staff, and we opened offices in Austin, Texas. And this was the hardest time of my life. And one evening I'm sitting down, and my wife KK is sitting there, my kids are there, and all of a sudden I said, I can't breathe. And she's like, are you okay? I was like, I can't breathe. And everything kept going black like I was gonna faint. And I was like, I'm perfectly healthy, I work out, I drink vegan smoothies, and so what's wrong with me? So they took me to the hospital, they put me on oxygen, they did I think it's called EKG, the heart thing, whatever it's called, and like they checked everything, blood pressure, they took tests, and finally the doctor comes in, he says, Seth, you are perfectly healthy. The only thing I think you have is you're having a panic attack, you are stressed, and that's it. And so at that moment, I had to make a decision. Am I gonna go forward with what I believe, not just as an opportunity, but as a conviction? This is what I think drives entrepreneurs so powerfully. It goes deeper than just an opportunity. You get conviction in your heart about something, like I can actually impact the world if I do this. So am I willing to move forward with these 20 plus staff? And great staff, by the way, nothing they did, this is all me. And am I able to grow into that? And that's when I began to realize my measure of success is completely commensurate, proportionate to my ability to grow on the inside. And so instead of walking away, I had to walk through that doorway of fear, and I was terrified and made tons of mistakes along the way. Some staff left, some we had to fire because they weren't good hires. It was very, like, a lot of turmoil those next 6 months. But looking back, I thank God, because we have an amazing team, and I had to grow up. I had to grow through that. And at points in life, you're going to reach a plateau, you're going to hit a ceiling, and it hurts, and you either walk away or you push through it.
I could add one point there. How many people watch more than 30 minutes of TV a day in this audience?
No one's admitting, are they?
Well, that's one of the things, like just watch less TVs. That creates a lot of fear and I would say stress. The media sometimes exaggerates stuff.
But you miss them. They don't watch 30 minutes of TV, but they watch it in
Netflix.
their feeds on Facebook instead. Yeah.
Or Netflix.
Yeah, well, the less propaganda you watch, probably the less panic you're gonna have. That's just something for me. Since I stopped watching the TV shows and whatever the news are feeding into me, I actually felt myself less stressful. So we get, of course, the news. We stay on top of things. You have to do it as an entrepreneur. You have to be aware of what's happening. Augusta's just given us a sign. We have 2 minutes left. The questions from the Slido slowed down. So maybe we have a question from the audience who's actually present here. If you want to type it or if you want to shout it at us. We have 2 minutes before this Q&A session.
Can I just say one thing as well? I think times like this as entrepreneurs, like, I don't know about you guys, but this rocky road we go on, basically I've got here by constant failure over time. And maybe I'm set up a bit more to look at the view of it quite differently. If there's new entrepreneurs in a room who've never experienced failure, I can understand that the fear level may be a bit higher. And it's not until you learn through a series of failure. We don't talk about failure. We don't talk about failed products, failed businesses and stuff, because it's not cool. We can't put that on Insta.
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah, nailed it, dude. Yeah.
But this stuff like that, the level of failure that you go through and you absorb and you learn from, sets you up for times like this.
Thank you. I think we're going to wrap up the session. Let's give the panel of this improvised Q&A session a round of applause. Guys, thank you very much.